All right, why don't we start this work session, if we could call it to order. And if the county council could turn to page 1, we'll do Bill 8-19, Milana Boehner, if I pronounce it. And good afternoon. And again, the council, this is page 1, Bill 8-19, Small Wireless Facility Design Guidelines, that Mr. Field did spend some time with us on. Good afternoon. Is this your first work session? Have you ever
sitting here? Yes.
Yeah. There you go. Floor is yours.
Sitting there now. All right. Does everyone have a copy of the pictures, the visual aids? Great. So I'm here today to talk about the FCC final declaratory ruling and third report, which was meant to streamline, but it really limited the FCC. The order really limited our ability, despite many objections from national groups, to be able to have control over our rights of way and our county property. So we can't do anything that effectively prohibits deployment. We can't issue any kind of moratoria on small wireless facility deployments. And there's also a limit on both environmental and historical review of any deployments that would be in such areas in the county. So the safety and aesthetics are what's been left to us. These standards must be reasonable, no more burdensome than those applied to other types of infrastructure deployments, objective, and published in advance. This bill is fulfilling these requirements and publishing prior to April 15th, which is the deadline. It's been a collaborative effort between law, permits, approvals, and inspections, OIT, DPW, planning, and OBF. And so I have all of the people that have been involved, or most of the people that have been involved in the first 2 rows, in case there's any technical questions that perhaps I'm not equipped to answer. We've looked at dozens of sample manuals, guidelines from states, from cities, local, and far. So we weren't completely recreating this from scratch. We tried to use best practices. The bill addresses general guidelines for existing, new, and replacement small wireless facility antennas, support structures, ground-mounted facilities, mid-span installations, minimum requirements for submissions for the applications, small wireless facilities in historic districts and landmark properties, noise, spacing, undergrounding, construction and safety requirements, requirements for surety bonds and other financial equivalents, indemnity and hold harmless provisions, and we also do intend to do an amendment to add a definition section to further clarify and for consistency throughout the bill. And if you have anyone reaching out to you, please pass on any suggestions. This is an open process, and when we do the design manual itself and publish it, this will be a cooperative process between the carriers, BGE, and anyone else that wants to have input. The purpose of small cells is really for dense urban suburban areas with power-hungry data, with data-hungry users to increase capacity. Estimates from the 4 major providers say that there will be about 60 new small cell antennas per square mile per carrier in the next 5 years, plus approximately 8 new miles of fiber in each square mile, which means 1 antenna every 300, 600 feet in the street. Verizon says that 10 to 100 times more antenna locations that currently exist. So what makes a wireless facility? So for small cells are actually low-powered antennas and nodes that have a range of about 6,500 feet. The nodes may or not be connected by fiber. Small actually refers to the area that's covered, not the size of the facility. Typically, it doesn't require very tall structures. Small cells today typically service only one provider, and they can be also called picocells, femtocells, and microcells. And in a wireless facility is an antenna, supporting structure, radio units, cooling equipment, fans, cabling, electrical communications, meters, backup power supplies, electrical communication systems, interconnections, facilities above ground and or on the pole and in volts. Generally, the federal regulations say that a small wireless facility is defined as something that is 50 feet or less, no more than 10% or no more than 10% taller than another adjacent structure. Each antenna is associated with a deployment, excluding associated antenna equipment, is no more than 3 cubic feet in volume. However, there's no limit on how many antennas there can be. And all other wireless equipment associated with the structure is no more than 28 cubic feet. And it does not, and small wireless facilities don't require antenna structure registration with the FCC. In terms of fees, the FCC set fees that are, according to them, a reasonable approximation of the local government's actual and reasonable costs, and therefore presumably reasonable. Non-recurring fees are $500 for a single upfront application. That includes up to 5 small wireless facilities with an additional $100 beyond the 5. $1,000 for non-recurring fees for a new pole to support a small wireless facility that's not a co-location. And for recurring fees, you're allowed to charge $270 per facility for an annual maintenance cost or something of the like. However, it doesn't actually begin to cover our efforts, as you can see by the amount of people that are here. So we're working through our cost study right now to fully reflect how many man-hours are involved and what the costs truly are to the county. There's also shot clocks. The order changed the shot clock to 60 days, where we have to, if we're adding to an existing structure, or 90 days for a new structure. The rules also provide for the resetting or pausing of the shot clock when we determine that the application is incomplete. These apply to any approval of a siting that we must issue under applicable law prior to deployment. So this includes zoning approvals, building permits, license, any agreements, leases, electric permits, road closure permits, and all such items. That has to be done within 60 days from the time they submit their application if the application is deemed to be complete. And that's a very quick timeline for something that's a pretty complex technology that requires a lot of agencies to review. In addition to the standards, we're currently working on an online web application and process, tracking, a GIS layer, form agreements, including ongoing current negotiations that are being managed by PAI. I've provided you visual aids, and the first 2 pages are deployments in the county, and the addresses are on the bottom. These 2 are by mobility. The next 2, I believe, are on state roads, so we didn't manage these. Then on the 3rd page, there's an example of what a facility can look like if we have aesthetic guidelines and what it can look like if we don't, if you look at the decorative post behind the initial one. And then the picture next to that is when it talks about no more than 28 cubic feet, that green box next to the tree, that's the additional facility equipment. It's not just the light pole with the 2 antennas on top. Then there's 2 more pictures after that. One, it just kind of shows what happens when you don't have aesthetic requirements. People just build and build and build and build because per the FCC they're allowed to do so, as long as it's no more than 10%. And then the other picture is so in the front there's a mid-span utility pole deployment. You can kind of see the little white antenna hanging off the BGE pole. And then there's a light pole deployment behind it. And then there's just 2 examples on 2 different kinds of utility poles. One has the boxes, one has the antennas hanging off the sides. This is just from the Wall Street Journal, just to kind of give you a little bit of background of the difference between the macro cells and the distributed antenna systems and how small cells fit into that and why they happen. And then there's, this was actually pulled from the city of Boston. They were really ahead of the curve here, and these are examples of mutually negotiated designs. So it saves everyone time where if they submit something that looks like this, you can just keep going and say, okay, this fits. We don't think it's terribly hideous. Go forward and go through the process. We're trying to streamline it as much as possible. The last one is a GIS rendering or map where it shows we've gotten 3 sets of applications. We had them in 2017 that came through the Tower Review Committee because at that point we were still figuring out our process. And then there's also, and then the little purple lines are AT&T applications that permits, approvals, and inspections got. And then there's mobility locations, ones that are constructed and ones that aren't constructed, and it's separated out by councilmanic districts.
Great, thank you. Councilman Patoka?
Thank you for that report. Can I ask, is this the team that is working on this, the first 2 rows here? And
Pretty much.
okay. And is it all from one agency or multi-agencies?
So,
Can we
planning,
planning? Okay.
permits, approvals, and inspections,
Okay.
DPW, law, OIT, DPW, traffic engineering, fiber, OIT, cable administrator, OIT, and that's not, and OBF, of course.
How's it going? Is it fun to work together with
We all like each other, so it's not too bad.
and county council?
Well, and the amazing thing is we've actually managed to, especially with some of our schedules, we've managed to put together meetings with groups this big just to get this done because it became it's such a high priority for us.
Well, that's exactly the point. Is that I know that each agency has its responsibilities that are routine, day out, and mandated, and some are mandated. But to put together a group that's working together as, I guess this is a task force. Is that the right term?
I call it a
What do you call
work
them?
group,
The Mod Squad?
but they're better with making up names.
But anyhow, I just want to thank you for working together. I think whenever agencies work across the county together, there's something to be said for that because it's not always the easiest thing to do. So thank you all, especially planners.
Any questions or comments from the council? Councilman Crandall?
There's a lot of expertise in the room, and I'm just wondering, I was wondering, do we do this for any other industry where we say you have 60 days permitting process or approval process? Do we have, I mean, of the various departments that do permitting, we also have Mr. Likens from EPS here. It just seems inordinate that we're doing it. It seems like we're doing it for one industry.
We're not doing it. The FCC is forcing this on us. This is what everybody needs to understand.
Well, then we are doing it, but we're just being forced against our will.
The FCC, and there are a lot of different aspects of the order that are being litigated, including truly whether the FCC has the authority to sort of take over local rights of way the way it's done that. So the issue is, and there are penalties for getting this stuff late, et cetera. But this has been thrust upon every single municipality and county in the country that might have, that might have the density that makes it attractive enough for the small cell providers to do all this. And we're just reacting to a mandate that came from the federal government. And there are a lot of questions as to whether or not, to various aspects of it, whether or not they properly applied the Communications Act, constitutional issues. But those things are going to take years to litigate. So in the meantime, the shot clock is there in the reg, and we're gonna have really no choice but to do what we can to comply with it.
Are we a party? Is Baltimore County a party to any of that litigation?
No, but we don't need to be at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to figure out the sense of urgency with this legislation, given that this thing may be tied up in the courts for a long time.
The requirement was that we get the aesthetics published and basically approved by April 15th. If we don't have this, we are sunk. So this bill has to, it just
What
has to
does,
pass.
what does sunk mean?
We won't be able to apply aesthetic regulations to what they do. We won't be able to control it, and Milana gave you a copy of what it looks like when you can't control it. So what we're proposing is to get this sort of very basic set of regulations in, and then you all are very familiar with the process for creating a manual, and you know eventually the manuals come to you for review, whether they're being created new or even amended under the current law. And so what we've done is we have, you know, whatever, 18 or 19 pages of fairly basic aesthetic requirements, and then we've given ourselves a year to draft a much more comprehensive manual, which under the law will go to the, you know, we'll draft it, eventually it'll go to the planning board, which will have its ability to weigh in, and then eventually it's going to come to the council for its approval. But again, we're really boxed in by the requirements of the order. But we have to have this now, otherwise we're not going to be able to do anything.
We can't do
Okay,
anything
thank
that even remotely seems like we're prohibiting their ability to deploy.
Or,
Or we get sued.
Or we're in violation. Yeah, this is
No joke. That is their actual remedy according to the FCC.
well, and I have to say, as someone that, you know, sits on a council whose primary responsibility and authority is land use, I know that we fight state efforts to usurp our authority. I feel like we're getting one up to you pretty bad.
We'd rather not be here, Councilman. This is being you know, one of the things that was also happening at the General Assembly for 2 years in a row, there have been different bills. Well, was there a MACO bill last year or just this year?
Yeah,
Did
it's
MACO
been
have its
3
own
years.
bill? So for 2 or 3 years in a row, there have also been competing bills dealing with this stuff. There was an industry bill and there was a MACO bill, and the contrast between the bills was stark. And for 3 years in a row, they haven't passed. And so even there, the General Assembly was toying with legislation that was going to further erode our ability to sort of regulate what goes in our rights of way. And for 3 years in a row, those bills have died as well. But Councilman, we don't want to be here either. We have just been given no choice by and keep in mind, I mean, the FCC order had been out there for a while, but it wasn't finally approved until September. It went into effect in January, and we had until April to get these aesthetic requirements in. The small cell issue has been out there for a few years, but, you know, sort of the standard doesn't even exist, really. There's no single standard. And more importantly, the sort of final word on what the reg was going to be didn't come down until September. And we've just been forced into this situation.
Well, thank you for the explanation, and thank you for the work that the group assembled here and their staffs have put into this. And, you know, I think that we're all for the ability to set aesthetic standards on things like this. So, you know, it does feel, though, that we are boxed in, but I don't know that we want to give up our ability to be able to say what these things look like in the future.
I tried my best to really include the strictest guidelines we could without crossing that boxed-in area of the FCC.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Have we heard from any public citizens, we got a lot of feedback or input or commentary from the citizens of Baltimore County?
A lot. I wouldn't say, I mean, I know that Amy's gotten correspondence from the carriers, from Mobility, from AT&T. I know that Verizon, I believe, is also. So I do know that they're paying attention to this. I'm sure they will be involved during the manual process, certainly, and I think they're hoping to even perhaps pursue some amendments to the current bill as is. So I know that there's that.
Have they offered any amendments or any input or anything in shaping this?
Just today.
And that's kind of what I'm wondering is we have to vote on this really soon. And I don't know, besides just a core group of people, that many people know what's going on here. But yeah, I'd be curious on what amendments, different, interested parties have, and do they make sense? Are there things we're missing, or things we should include? Or, this is all very last moment, so.
I don't know if the industry understands as well as Mr. Field does that we're sort of boxed in, so maybe they're taking a pass because they know they've already got a pretty good situation. I don't say that lightly, but I can't speak to that. But and I don't know if they are balking at any of what is in the bill, but they sounds like the industry is in a good situation.
Right.
Yeah.
We've already, because we consult with people, we do already have in mind some amendments. Ms. Vayner mentioned that. I guess there wasn't a definition section or needed to be fleshed out.
Yeah,
So.
we will submit an amendment just to, as you can see, some terms weren't defined, like it didn't reference the full definition of small wireless facility per the federal guidelines. That's going to go in there. And so just the very basic definitions, wireless provider is going to be defined, just so that we're consistent when we use certain terms in the aesthetics, what that means, applicant, something like that. But they're not going to, the definitions is really the only major, big thing that we're going to propose as an amendment.
And we got the letter from AT&T probably like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, so we really, around then, so we haven't had a chance to really look at it. Actually, the truth is it was 3 pages long. It wasn't like a and I'm not sure, I think Milana had already had some feelings about some of them, but even AT&T's amendments weren't significant.
Well, what do we do as a county between the time that this bill becomes law, or bill passes, and between the, say, the new manual that's going to be created? What happens in that?
We'll be applying these to the best of our ability.
Okay. On a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, generally, yes. One of the things that Ms. Vayner was saying is that the other thing that we're trying to build is an online application. So presumably a lot of what's here, or some of it at least, will feature in the online application. But we're used to reviewing plans. That's what everybody here does for a living, is reviewing plans. The issue is just that it's kind of a different quality of plans that we're used to reviewing. But we'll try to apply them. And obviously one thing that I'm sure will happen is that we'll learn some lessons as we're applying them, and that stuff will go into the manual.
Councilman Patoka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the obsolescence of 5G. And what I mean by that is my fear in terms of making this equipment look good is that at some point they become obsolete. As technology moves so quickly, I think at some point we'll be left with cell towers all over the place. From time to time you see a poor resident that has this giant dish on his or her roof that back then it was the finest technology available, and now it's a big dish on the roof. And so do we have a sense of how long 5G will be the current technology before we move to something else? And I say that to make the point that if it does move on to something else, then we're going to have poles that don't look good unless we adopt these regs. And then do we have any leverage with the industry to take their equipment down once it becomes obsolete?
Well, in terms of removing the equipment, we have language in the bill saying if they abandon it, we're going to remove it and do it at their cost. So if they're not using it,
Is that true for cell towers as well? Just the cell towers that you see on the road?
For the ones that we have licensed them, we put it through the agreement right through. When we put in those agreements, we put it in that we originally have to remove them within a certain period of time.
yes.
Okay. And the life of 5G is an unknown at this point?
It hasn't even, They might even be, they might be small. They'll probably, once they have a right of way and they have a permit and a license and some sort of infrastructure to build on, I don't see them abandoning it unless the technology changes to such an extent where that's just not, antennas aren't needed at all.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Tom?
Other questions, Councilman Crandall?
Yeah, just real quick. So I'm under the assumption that BGE also plays a role in this because some of their poles would be utilized. Is that correct? Okay. They own poles that the antennas would go onto. So, Irvin, does BGE have any amendments pending? Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? How about our schools? I mean, is all our schools part of this whole, or no?
What do you mean by schools?
Like, I mean, there's a lot of right-of-ways and stuff that I would imagine would be properties close to schools, or no?
We don't have the ability to tell them they can't put it somewhere because that would be effectively prohibiting their deployment.
They what? Okay. Huh. Yeah, this is, yeah. Any other questions or comments from the council? I mean, to me, like, just politically, it seems like looking at FCC and, like, really, who's really running the FCC? Is it being run by, like, maybe industry, or is it being run by, for the citizens? I don't know. It's curious. I think Councilman Crandall has an opinion. All right. Anybody else? Questions or comments?
Should we talk about net neutrality?
Well, this one's a little... I appreciate the work of this whole group. I mean, very seldom do we see so many departments,
This isn't even everyone.
Yeah. Well, appreciate all your work, all the different departments, and I guess we'll see how it goes. We'll get this bill passed, and then maybe we'll have amendments. Maybe we'll, develop this manual. Maybe we'll have other revisions along the way. But at least this gets us a kind of a foothold to do that.
Quote a former county executive who used to say, "Let's not make the perfect be the enemy of the good."
Yeah.
So this is merely good at this point, and we will hope to get to perfect a year from now.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you all. Appreciate it. Appreciate your work. Why don't we move on then? And why don't we go to Bill 9-19, page 3, Councilman Jones.
Okay.
See you, Mr. O'Connor.
Bill 9-19. I give everybody an opportunity to leave.
Page 3.
Deals with people's ability to make an appeal to their sewage bill. What we have found is over the years, people would get a sewage bill, and they would get their tax bill, and they would have to forward their tax bill to their mortgage company. And what has happened over the years is now the mortgage companies download all of those tax bills by some service from the government. So a lot of times, citizens are looking at their tax bills and not necessarily paying an awful lot of attention to them. So number one, and I'm not going to get too far, what I'm going to do at this time, since in the process of a person getting a bill, and let's just assume that they know that there's an issue because of the sewage bill is high. So at this time, I'm going to yield my time to my Councilwoman Bevins, who has an amendment, and then when she's done, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, I'll pick back up where she left off.
Sounds good.
I do. Thank you, Councilman Jones and Mr. Chair. So I've received 3 or maybe 4 phone calls this year from constituents that got themselves into some real financial binds because of their bill. Not knowing what was the cause. Their house payment went up a couple $100 a month. By the time they were able to figure out what went wrong, it was too late to fix it. So actually, someone in my office brought in the literature that actually comes with your tax bill, and we thought it was very interesting. There are certain things that are highlighted up at the top in bold print. Metropolitan district changes, to change your billing address, non-delivery of bills or payments, electronic check, credit, debit card payment, tax credit, tax sale property. So everything's in bold print except how to appeal. That's not in bold print. It's on the first page, and actually I got this blown up. So this is the first page of your tax bill, and it's right here, just stuck in the middle. Or you can call the Department of Public Works, and it gives the number. Also, any appeals of the Metropolitan District charges, thank you, Mr. President, should be addressed to the Director of Public Works within 90 days of the bill date. Thank you. So I felt like this was very discriminatory. Suppose someone's illiterate. They can't even read this to know that they can appeal. There's not a director's name. There's not a director's address. There's nothing on here to say who to contact, it has a phone number, but I thought for something as important as an appeal, there should really be a bolded area on this bill. Because what happens, as Mr. Jones said, by the time their escrow comes out and they're like, wait a minute, what's going on here between my tax bill and now I'm getting this from my mortgage company, you're over 90 days in. And you can't reverse it. It's so hard to reverse at this point once your house payment's been adjusted to this issue. So my amendment is, where is it? Thank you. It should be providing the option to appeal with its own heading, and which is currently not listed, and residents will be able to fully know what their rights are with respect to appealing the water charges. And I believe that the way that this reads right now, people do not have the ability to do that. First off, I don't know anybody who reads this all the way, but I can tell you what, if it said how to appeal your bill in bold print on the front page, people would be paying attention to it. I think it's important enough to be bolded.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bevins. So anyway, getting back to, some people will not know that they have an issue with their sewage charges until the mortgage company comes to them and say, we have to adjust your escrow. So I went out and researched and talked to 6 of the largest mortgage companies, starting with Wells Fargo, Chase, and right down the line. And we asked them, when do you do your escrow analysis? And they said they do it once a year, but what they try to do is after they get the tax bill, they start working on it, and they have to give everybody an escrow analysis once a year. So they're doing it all across the country. But what they end up saying is they try to get it done anywhere from, say, October through January. Some are not getting out as late as January. So the issue that I just had, which brought this to light, I had these issues before, but the one that just came up was a person did not know that they had this high sewage bill. They had a water issue. They fixed the water issue. They went to the city. They had it adjusted. Now, some period later, we're charging them the sewage charge based off of what the water bill was. So now the person gets this information from his mortgage company that says your bill has gone up $350. Now he doesn't even know what to do, so we have the person right there who's coming in who just made it. He had an emergency, but I'm happy to see him here. He had an issue. We'll have him testify after Mr. Chair. Yes. So anyway, so people don't know this until after they get information from their mortgage company. By that time, 90 days is gone. So the issue for me was what happens on the 95th day? Where do we come up with 90 days from? What happens on the 100th day? What happened on the 150th day? Because wherever we cut it off, at the end of the day, what we're telling the citizens, the people who pay for all of this, which our reason for being here is for them, what we tell them is, oh, well, so sad, you missed 90 days, you're going to have to pay this an additional amount of money to your mortgage company, even though we know, because we have records, even though we know that you probably shouldn't have to pay it. But because you missed the 90 days, and the explanation that was just given to me was you have to have a cutoff somewhere. Well, if it's up to me, the cutoff would be 240 days. And so that's really the issue. The issue is, are we going to do what's in the best interest of the citizens, or are we going to have people who work here, such as myself, who get paid to be here and do a job, have them have the tail wag the dog, have them tell the citizens what we're going to do. And because to me, it was just unconscionable that we would tell somebody that they should pay another $350 a month on their mortgage just because. And by the way, you put this kind of bill on people, it has some serious consequences. Everybody can't pay, and then everybody can't pay an additional $300 or $200 or $100 on their mortgage. That has serious consequences. You're talking about people being in homeless shelters. We're talking about foreclosures. We're talking about kids going to a field trip. We're talking all sorts of consequences when you put an undue burden on a family. So to me, the issue here is really about looking out for what's in the best interest of the citizens, especially when there's no harm for us. There's no real harm for us that I can see whether or not somebody should be able to appeal on the 91st day versus the 89th day or the 200th day or the 95th day. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to finish my time now. I think I've rambled on long enough. But the bottom line, this is about doing what's in the best interest of the citizens so that they have an opportunity to appeal. Not to say that they will be successful, but at least they have an opportunity.
And I know we have one public speaker, but before we get to the public speaker, do any of the council members have anything more? Councilwoman?
I just wanted to add another comment that we talked about earlier today, which I found interesting. When we have issues for constituents, residents of Baltimore County, with issues with code violations and things like that, we always hear from those agencies, you know, we're not here to make money, we don't want to fine people, we just want to get them into compliance. And then we have something serious like this, and it just doesn't seem fair with the time that you have. When we have homes out there that year after year after year after year are not in compliance, and you know, they have their appeals process, which is long and lengthy, and really cause and wreak havoc on our communities. But yet something like this, it seems it could be just a simple change and something that would be fair. Just seems like the right thing to do. So thank you, Councilman. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments from the council before we get to our public speaker? Mr. Dorsey?
Yes, the councilwoman asked in terms of the issue of emboldening part of the tax brochure. So when we print this year's tax brochure, I'll have them bold that section that you asked about.
And also have the director's name and an address. All it lists is a phone number. So I think that there's, and we can talk about it later, but I think more information.
Yeah, we can check on that. In terms of the space, I want to make sure we have to be able to have
Right.
the space. But certainly bolding wouldn't cause us any space
Sure,
issue. But we can talk about that and get that resolved.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
In terms of the issue of the deadline, I've always thought perhaps that perhaps 180-day would be a good level, because after 180 days, that's December, we start putting together the data for the next year's tax bills. And so it would be good that we have at least some cutoff point for standard appeals to be able to get that done, so we can close out the system of 1 year and start moving and loading the data for the next. As to the question, and perhaps Mr. Walsh could, oh, he's still there, okay, would be able to address that. It's the question whether or not, while we could have a standard cutoff date, whether there's the ability for him to, consider other appeals beyond that, that point in time, whether it's the amount you said or even a different period of time, where his discretion, he can look at, is there something that went wrong that needs to be addressed in terms of those kinds of issues. On tax bills, if I see something going wrong, I address it, even if it's later. So, perhaps he would be able to respond to that. But in terms of, he and I have talked about the issue, the 180 days, we have some certainty there. We will have captured most of the appeals, allows us to start loading the data for the next year. And then there's a question he may want to address, whether if it was allowed for him to then, at his discretion, look at whichever appeals come in.
Mr. Dorsey, I appreciate your question, and I think the issue for me is, number one, I think, to be perfectly honest, I think we have some very well-intentioned, conscientious people that work for us who believe in following the rules. And when the rule is 90 days, they had no problem telling me no. They had no problems telling some of my colleagues no. 90 days is the rule. Oh well, so sad. Who cares what happened to that person and their family? So, in the spirit of people following the rules, it's my intention, and hopefully my colleagues, that we change the rules to 240 days. Now, I understand that there are some things in the works that's going to eliminate this issue, hopefully, because right now we don't know how many people are out there, but there are some things in the works in terms of let me know if I speak out of turn, looking at permits. So if a person files a permit, we know they have an issue, maybe we preemptively fix their bill. If we notice some other issues with spikes in water bills, maybe we preemptively fix their bill. So these things, from what I understand, are in the works. Also notification, all of that is great. And I'm hopeful that all of those things will work and eliminate this issue. But at the end of the day, I don't see this issue involving that many people. 1, 2, to one person, that's their life, that's their livelihood, that's their family. To us, one person is not going to change anything, or 2 people. I just don't see where this will somehow disrupt our system in terms of dealing with everybody that we deal with in terms of sending out bills or what have you. And I was also, oh, go ahead, I won't say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ms. Rogers.
Good afternoon, council members. Just want to add a comment here. I totally agree with you with respect to a customer service approach. And if there are issues that are causing our residents to feel as though it's just so cut and dry, there's no way to address special circumstances, because that's what it seems to me, that in the instance of a special circumstance, there should be a way to discuss it, particularly thinking as a citizen myself about my mortgage and how long a mortgage company would get something to me. That's beyond my control. So what I would suggest is that we look at together is a provision for, because it's such a small, we hope that it's a small population, that there is a provision that deals with special circumstances. Now, I know that could get, very tenuous, because then what is the definition of a special circumstance, and what's the time frame there? But I do want to try to balance from the standpoint of what I heard Mr. Dorsey say about the time frame by which we have to load the tax information to prepare the bills. So if there's room for negotiation with respect to moving from 90 to 240 days, because if we look at 240 days, roll that forward, where that hits in the cycle in terms of the bill preparation, looking down into December. But I do think that we should look for opportunity to have special circumstances where, of course, we can look into something, particularly if someone's coming forward and say, I did not receive this information in order to act timely, whether it's 90 days or whatever the cutoff is. That's what I'd like to offer as a way to discuss it further.
Mr. Dorsey?
And just one other item to let you know. In terms of, even at the dates that you have, Councilman, I experienced this past year a citizen who, it was more than a whole year. It was the second time around. She had not seen the increase. I adjusted her bill because it made sense. What she was being charged for was not right. And so that's more than a year. I'm talking about, it was the spring of the year after she should have been, appealing. But it was the county's fault in terms of why she was getting the huge bill. And it would not have been fair to send her to tax sale for what she didn't protest within 90 days just because she didn't notice it for more than a year. So what I'm saying in terms of if there's the issue, what Mrs. Rogers has pointed out, perhaps the issue is, let's have a reasonable cutoff for standard, but then allow for flexibility to do what makes sense to do.
Councilman?
Mr. Dorsey, I applaud your efforts, and I certainly appreciate you doing what I would consider the right thing, which is there were special circumstances, and you acted and you made a difference in somebody's life. And I think that that is the right thing to do. But I think what we're talking about here is not you or I. We're talking about other employees who do the right thing, which is follow the rules. So when somebody comes in on the 91st day, before it gets to you, before it gets to me, before some people even apply, some people look at the rule and say, oh, 90 days, I missed it, oh well, so sad, I'll tough it out. Those employees are saying no. And those citizens are turning around, enduring the hardship. Now, all due respect, I understand we want to send out bills. I understand we want to move on to the next year. But in reality, we're talking about 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 people. I think we can make adjustments on 1, 2, 3 or 4 or 10 people without somehow destroying our ability to send out tax bills for the next year. I don't think we're talking about an awful lot. And if we come back a year from now and you say we have 500 people really messing up the system, blah, 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 then okay, we can look at it then. But right now, I don't really see any reason. I mean, I'm hearing an awful lot of reasons that if I were to measure them and weigh them, they would not stand up to a citizen somehow enduring an additional cost. Because we're not talking about changing the process of their appeal. We're not talking about changing the procedures to what would, or excuses or reasons why they would be successful. We're just saying, don't close the door in front of somebody's face. Let them come in and apply like everybody else. And if the circumstances are such that they are not entitled to a reduction, so be it. But let's not just have somebody who works somewhere in our county say, it's beyond 90 days. Oh well, so sad. Good luck paying that 300. Good luck paying that 400. Good luck paying whatever it is, because it's not my problem. I think we're better than that. I think Baltimore County is better than that. And I think, our county executive says he wants to make a better Baltimore County. Well, this is one way, one step at a time, making it better for the citizens who pay for Baltimore County government to operate.
Other questions or comments from the council? I mean, I'm sort of, I'm listening to both sides, and what if we did something, and this is just talking out loud, but what if we did something in maybe it's 180 days, but then on top of that, we build an additional language because not everybody's going to know to go to Keith Dorsey. Most people have no idea who to talk to or the right people and stuff, but maybe there's some compromise type of language that might be able to get what you need at the same time trying to balance the administration's concerns, perhaps. But, Councilman?
I think, all due respect, I think we would start to make this extremely complicated. Right now we're changing from 90 days to 240. If we start building in additional circumstances, we start building in what is a special circumstance, what is an unspecial circumstance, I think we're starting to make this more complicated than it has to be. I really think even with the 240, in my heart, I picked that date because that was a date that the mortgage company said, sometimes we don't send bills out until escrow analysis until January. Now, if a person comes along in February and says, oh, by the way, I didn't know this. I got this escrow analysis. I got to pay $400 more a month, and this is about that water bill, and I had the water fixed, and I have all the documentation to prove that I did the right thing. I had the permit pulled. I paid the plumber. The plumber fixed it. There was a leak outside at the main line, and blah, 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 and I shouldn't have to pay that. I would hope that we would say, you're right, you don't have to pay it. And it may be a little extra work on our part. Maybe I got to take out my piece of paper and write a hand bill for you to take to your mortgage company. Maybe I got to do a little extra. But so that you not suffer, I would hope we would do that. I would hope that we would do it if a person came along and said, by the way, I did everything I was supposed to do. The only thing I didn't do was notify you at that time because I didn't know until my mortgage company sent something to me. Because normally that's the part to get people's attention. You send me the bill, okay, yeah, okay, sure. But when the mortgage company says your mortgage is going up, that gets your attention. So to me, the 240, I mean, we had to pick a date, so we picked 240. And nobody wants the thing to go on. But then I found out today that state law says that at some point a person can go as far as 3 years. Now, I wasn't exactly sure all the details. Mr. Walsh can explain it more, but I'm told that there's state statute that says you can go as far as 3 years. So to me, I guess can't see why we would not want to give this a try and see what happens. We're not talking about widgets and we're talking about people in their lives. And we're talking about, I go often to our shelter and I see people where things happen, good people, hardworking people, but things happen beyond their financial control and they end up in a bad way. So, that's foremost in my mind. I'm done, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions or comments? I mean, last question, I know we have a public speaker, is what type of numbers are we talking about? Is this a fairly common occurrence, or is this something fairly unusual? A few hundred per year in the county? Okay. All right, I know, Councilman Jones?
Is that a few hundred additional, or is that a few hundred today?
A few hundred additional or a few hundred today? Today. Okay. All right, and then I know we have, any other questions or comments? I know we do have one public speaker that came in to speak, per Councilman Jones. And sir, if you want to come on up, and you can have up to 3 minutes to speak. If you want to sit up in this chair here, I think the microphone is on. And sir, when you're done testifying, if you could give your name and address to our council secretary, just for the record.
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Floor is yours.
First of all, good afternoon, Chairman,
Good afternoon.
County Council, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak. My name is Brian Oden. As the councilman probably alluded to earlier, and I have to apologize for coming in uniform as well. It was not my intention, and I'm going to be returning back to work. So, excuse me for that. But very briefly, again, I had a water leak at my home, the 2818 Claybrook Drive. Unbeknownst to me, we had it fixed, obviously, through a plumber. We did what we thought we needed to do. We took responsibility for that, and we had it fixed. I'll take certain responsibility because we received our tax bill, and probably I did not open it. I just normally, and I may not be the only one, but I did, and I'll take responsibility for that. We had a water leak, and the fees, my normal fees were approximately $380 for the sewer through the Metropolitan that we would pay, the fee, and it jumped to approximately $3,400. I didn't become aware of that until December. Well, the leak started in 2017. We had it fixed in September 2017. Received a tax bill in 2018, but again, I didn't become aware of it until December 2018 when I apologize. When I contacted my mortgage company, and they immediately like, "Sir, I know why you're calling. So it's nothing that we can do. Contact Baltimore County." So that's in fact what I did. Contacted Baltimore County. It was December the 28th, right after Christmas. So contacted Baltimore County. They routed me to Metropolitan Water Service, I believe. And again, the young lady on the other end knew exactly why I was calling. And she shared with me the information that it exceeded, you had 90 days to appeal. Obviously, I was past that 90 days. So again, right after Christmas, I didn't know really what to do. So I knew that once the first of the year, folks would be back in the office. So I would start making phone calls at that time. Made a few phone calls. Again, they were sharing with me 90 days was the limit, and you exceeded that. The appeal process, appeal process in 90 days. So I really didn't have anywhere to turn. So I contacted Councilman Jones, shared with him what my situation was. I've had an opportunity to know Councilman Jones for over 30 years, live in his district as well. So I didn't know where else to turn. So that's when I contacted Councilman Jones, and he and his team started working on the situation.
Any questions?
Actually, it took some time for it to get resolved. I'm grateful that it did get resolved. Baltimore County readjusted the bill. I think the average, back to around the average, $340, $350. So I'm greatly appreciative of that. However, my mortgage company received a bill and paid the excess escrow account, which was approximately $3,000, which increased my monthly payment approximately $750. So again, as of last week, I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, last time I spoke with my mortgage company, they have not received the adjusted bill from Baltimore County. They cannot readjust it, my mortgage back to a normal account until they receive a readjusted bill from Baltimore County. And as of 2 weeks ago, they have not received that, and they, so I'll call them back in a week or so. Thank you for your time, sir.
Well, that would certainly get my attention as well, for sure. Councilman Jones?
No, Lieutenant Odin, again, I thank you for your service. I know Lieutenant Odin because his brother was a battalion chief in Anne Arundel County, and over the years I had an opportunity to know Purnell and his entire family, including Brian. And Brian, I certainly appreciate you coming in today, and I appreciate your service as a lieutenant in the Maryland Transportation Authority Police. I know you called me and said you had an emergency on one of the bridges, and somebody, what am I supposed to say? Can I say it?
That's fine, sir.
That somebody had possibly some bombs or something in their vehicles?
Well, it was negative, sir.
It was negative? Okay, good. Thank goodness. But anyway, I appreciate you coming in. I really thank you for your time and your service.
Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
So the $750 increase per month, how many months did that go on before it was actually, fixed and your mortgage went back down?
Well, it's actually not actually fixed as of yet. What I do is I'm allowed to pay a portion, and it goes into, I guess, a suspense, but it's not actually being credited towards my monthly mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not totally complete and fixed yet. Again, as of 2 weeks ago, when I spoke to my mortgage company, and I'll speak with them again, they have not received a readjusted bill from Baltimore County.
Oh, so it's not resolved completely?
Not yet.
Okay.
Councilman Jones?
Thank you.
One more question, Lieutenant Odin, because number one, I'm so happy you came because can I ask you a question?
Yes,
What is your level of education?
Well, I have a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University. I have a bachelor's degree from Johns Hopkins University, and I have an associate's degree from the Community College of Baltimore County.
Thank you. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but the point I'm making is, most of us have a life to live. We're living that life. We're trying to pay the bills. We're trying to get the kids to soccer practice, baseball practice, basketball practice, and we try. It's not. I had a person say to me today, it's about personal responsibility. Well, people have personal responsibilities, and their families normally come first. And these things happen. And it's incumbent upon us to do what we can to do our part, not to say, oh, well, so sad, you missed 90 days, good luck, have at it. I just think that that's an unacceptable answer. And I know I'm, being dramatic when I say it that way, but the end result is the same. Thank you.
And we obviously have a couple days before we have to vote, but I'm definitely interested in the administration's viewpoint, and if there's other amendments or things we can do to come to some type of, place where all can agree. But this is a great example of somebody real life being affected pretty impactfully. But I'm hearing the administration too, and I'm hearing the administration trying to work case by case on this. But as a council member with certainty, I know all the members get questions and comments. I can't even tell you how many times I've had constituents call me about a problem with their water bill or a problem with Metro, and it's a pretty ongoing issue for sure. Any other comments, Councilman Jones?
Yes, I do have another question because I did not know the issue in terms of us resolving it with the mortgage company. I would like to know from Mr. Dorsey, what is the average time when such adjustments are made that we get additional information out either to the homeowner or to the mortgage company, or when do we make those adjustments?
the adjustment he's referring to would have been one that would have been made in the metro section in terms of Public Works. But in terms of right now, that section is greatly swamped with a lot of corrections they have to make because, frankly, we're getting a lot of not good information out of Baltimore City, and it's taking them a long time to get through things. And so, you know, I'm sure they are working the best they can to get it done as fast as they can, but the level of errors is just too high right now.
Well, it should be noted that we are in a dispute ourselves with the city, are we not?
That is correct.
Which is still unresolved, maybe to the tune of 20 million? Is that still the number around?
Well, it's a growing number.
Yeah. Yes, okay, any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments?
Chairman,
All right.
just wanted to let you know that's one of the issues that was first and foremost on my plate. So no, that is high on our radar. But the other thing I just want to reiterate, it is our first and foremost, the CE as well as me. Customer service is job one for us because, Councilmember Jones, it is a case that we're here to serve the citizenry, and you have our commitment to ensure from a customer service standpoint that we address issues expediently. We do apologize to this gentleman for what happened, but I do say that there is a commitment to the county, from the county, to address issues as they're presented. And I think this situation is an example where I agree with you, where the guidelines, people are just trying to stay with and do their job, but to have that flexibility from a standpoint of triaging things that are anomaly, that's what we want to have, that provision. Now, the time frame, I know we can talk back and forth, but bottom line, if a citizen brings an issue and concern, then we want to mitigate that. That is our commitment, to have excellent customer service across the board.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you, Chairman, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
All right, and then if the council could turn to page 4, Bill 10-19, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much. This legislation simplifies the process by which signs are reviewed in downtown Towson. Right now, all signs in the downtown Towson district must be reviewed by the design review panel. Bill 1019 would say that the Department of Planning would review every signage proposal administratively and decide whether or not the proposal should be referred to the DRP for its evaluation. We will keep the requirement that requires any signage above the 6th floor to be reviewed by the DRP. We've had some situations where building owners have potentially lost tenants because of the months it can take for DRP review, and I do have a letter here in support of this legislation from the Greater Towson Committee.
Any questions or comments for Councilman Marks? Councilman Patilka?
Yes, Councilman Marks, is there a specific business that's had a problem with signage that that we haven't been able to process in a timely fashion?
There have been several. The most prominent was 210 Allegheny Avenue, where they almost lost a tenant because it took months to get through the process. In talking to the communities, I think their main concern is signage of a certain height, and that will still be under DRP review.
Well, the last thing we want to do is lose a business because we can't process things timely.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Everybody good? All right, then why don't we do page, let's see, Resolution 46-19, page 5, Councilman Marks?
Yeah, this is a pretty easy technical bill. In 2014, we designated a park site in Perry Hall. That subsequently became the location for Honeyhill Elementary School. This simply wipes away the language in the previous bill and basically wipes the park name off the maps.
Any questions or comments for Councilman Marks? Any other questions, comments, thoughts before we adjourn the work session? Yeah. Why is it a sauna today? Mr. Bostwick.
Mr. Dorsey,
we can't blame it on Fred Homan anymore.
Yeah, I always thought Mr. Homan kept it off, so I don't know.
All righty. Well, thank you all very much. Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.